This lesson is on Chapter 10 ArrayList, Section 1 to 4 of this chapter. We will talk about how to write code to create objects ArrayList, how to manipulate elements in an ArrayList object, and introduce the for each loop. ArrayList is a predefined Java API class. To use it, you must import it first. An ArrayList object stores a list of values. Individual values can then be accessed via an index. ArrayList is good for manipulating a list of items. The index starts at 0, and the largest index is the size of the ArrayList object minus 1. For example, if you have 5 elements in an ArrayList object, the first item is at index 0, the next at index 1, then index 2, 3, and the last item is at index 4. The ArrayList class comes with many instance methods for working with individual items in the list or the whole list, such as insert, delete, and search. When inserting and deleting elements, an ArrayList object grows and shrinks automatically. The size method returns the number of elements currently in the ArrayList object, and it changes automatically with each call of add and remove. Here is an example ArrayList program. The import statement is at the top of the program. The program handles an ArrayList of strings. It first declares an ArrayList of strings. The type in the triangle brackets, string here, specifies the type of the elements. The right-hand side of the statement then instantiates such an ArrayList object. The base type string here may be skipped in new. This new object is then assigned to object attributes. At this point, the object would be empty, and its size method would return a value of 0. Next, we call the add methods to append 4 items to this ArrayList object. The next call with the add specifies an index and will insert the element into this index location 1. As a result, the items originally at index 1 and above will be shifted automatically 1 position up. The program then removes a random item from the ArrayList object by picking a random integer between 0 and the size minus 1 and invoke the remove method. Whichever element is removed, the items after it, if any, will be automatically shifted down 1 position to close this hole. The program then prints the removed item and the remaining elements in the ArrayList object. In an example run, pita is removed, and here are the 4 remaining elements. When an ArrayList object is concatenated with a string or provided to a print statement, its elements are printed in a comma-separated list surrounded by square brackets. It would be helpful to be able to see the elements in an ArrayList object when we trace the program execution. Be aware that Java Visualizer doesn't show contents of ArrayList. It just shows it as an object. To see a content of an ArrayList object, you may add extra print statements to print contents to the program, as simple as this statement. At our level, we should learn how to use the debugger in Eclipse or similar IDEs. This screenshot is a partial image of the debugger in Eclipse. You will be able to see the ArrayList object itself and the elements. See how to debug your program under Course Information module for details of how to use the debugger. Figure 10.1 of our textbook lists those commonly used ArrayList methods. All of those methods are instance methods and have to be invoked on an ArrayList object. We have seen the 2 add methods, the remove and the size method. The contains methods checks whether an item exists in an ArrayList object and returns true or false. The index of method also checks whether an item exists but returns its index value if it does, or -1 if not. The next index of method works similarly but finds the next occurrence of an element if there are multiple copies, while index of returns the first occurrence. The get method allows you to retrieve an item at a specific index. The isEmpty method checks whether an ArrayList object is empty. The set method allows you to update the value of an existing item. The E type here is the type of the element you specified when declaring an ArrayList object. For more details of those methods and additional ArrayList methods, you should check the Java API documentation. The link here is for JDK 8. Here is the link for JDK 11. ArrayList hasn't changed, at least the methods we use in this course. For the future, I will only specify the URL of one version. You can easily Google JDK 11 API, JDK 13 API, and so on. No matter which version you use, you should get into the habit of referencing Java API documentation regularly.